Bueno, titanes, bienvenidos a un videazo que van a ver ahora, que es mi charla con Joey Flex en el Mundial de Malta. Obviamente ahora ya me ven que estoy en Uruguay, pero este video lo recuperamos porque nos costó un poco recuperarlo, porque era muy pesado el archivo. Y básicamente es una charla con Joey Flex. Joey Flex es hoy en día uno de los mejores, si no el mejor entrenador del mundo en Powerlifting y PF. Es el que tiene mayor cantidad de campeones mundiales, todo internacional que va a ser, el tipo está ahí con campeones, es una locura. Lo que tiene Joey Flex es un tipo que, como que cuando ves su contenido, vos no ves mucha información del tipo. Como que no notás que te tire cosas que digas, mirá, yo esto no había pensado. El loco habla mucho de lo que nosotros ya sabemos. Habla sobre carrera progresiva, habla de comunicarse con un atleta, como que habla de las cosas normales. Entonces mi intención ese día, con la entrevista, fue ver si podía llegar un poquito más o descubrir un poco más de cómo planifica su metodología y qué es lo que piensa y qué es lo que hay detrás de los resultados que tiene, porque es innegable que el tipo tiene los mejores resultados del mundo del powerlifting. Así que sin más, lo dejo con la entrevista con Joey Flex. Comenten abajo porque es Joey Flex, digo. Tienen un comentario, tienen un like, aprecien el video, aprecien que fui a buscar a Joey Flex para el contenido y que me grabé todo en inglés, cuando en inglés estoy un poco oxidado por más de que lo entiendo igual que el español. Hablarlo se me es un poco rústico, pero espero que hayan entendido y espero que la traducción quede bien porque se la dejé a cargo de mi editor y confío que quedó bien. Abrazo y los veo en los comentarios.
¿Estás ahí? ¿Usted va a hablar? Okay. Okay, so we have 3 questions to get through, so we are going to get right into it. So I know your style of programming, or what I see, is you do like a higher level of specificity, and I don't see a lot of like structures to. I mean, what I see from outside, from like block periodization. So what's your take on like doing like a block for hypertrophy, a block for like volume, whatever, a block for peaking? What's your take on that?
So in terms of block periodization, in the old days, it used to be like 4 weeks of strictly volume, maybe a deload, and then 4 weeks of sort of a strength. They call it strength, but you're working in the 4 to 6 range, maybe 5 to 3 range, and then you'd have another block, maybe a shorter block that's like power, right? This is like an old, we call it antiquated, right, way of doing things. And then later, the lifting scientists, people behind, started to discover that it was a little better, more beneficial to have. So like, let's say instead of benching, once a week or twice a week, and you're only doing like, higher rep stuff, if you did like a common, really popular rep scheme that I like is like maybe you have sets of 8, sets of 6, and sets of 4, right? So you're kind of getting a lot of benefits from all the different rep ranges, from all those different blocks. So I kind of combine them. Here's the thing, with programming, nowadays I think the best way to go about things is to just find out what works best, right? So maybe some people, you can start off at the top of the week and they're doing like higher volume stuff, and then maybe in the middle of the week they have maybe something in a traditional lower rep range, but maybe the RPE is really low, so it's not so difficult. And then at the end of the week, they might have an SBD day where they're doing like doubles or singles or something. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but I think at the end of the day, whenever you're programming for lifters, you just have to keep an open mind and understand that like there's rules, right? There's certain things that you have to follow, certain fundamentals, but aside from that, you can actually be very flexible in the way that you do things. I would say, I still do use training blocks, but I'm very like adaptive. So for example, if I give someone 4 weeks of programming and I see something is ahead of schedule, or maybe we hit the numbers we planned for week 4 and we hit it early, I might change the rest of the block, because now you just have to be sort of almost reactive to what's happening. But in terms of like that traditional way of periodization, I think it's just more beneficial now to have a little bit of every phase throughout, and then as you get closer to the competition, you're really ramping up your specificity, because that's what you're going to do in the meet. At the end of the day, you're doing singles, and obviously it's not practical to do only singles, literally only singles. However, there are weightlifters that when they start getting ready for competition, that's what they do. So we know that it can work. It's just the mental strain, the physical strain. So that's why we use all these other more practical ways of sort of that fit the lifter and powerlifting a little bit better than like Olympic weightlifting, which is more of like a ballistic movement. It's like a quick, dynamic movement. Yeah.
So you don't, or how you manage, like for example, like accessory work. Like for instance, you have a lifter who is maybe a little underweight. He needs to like build a little more muscle. Maybe you think about like doing like chest presses, dumbbell presses, flights. Do you do more of that like further away from competition, and you take it away closer, or how do you manage that?
So that's one way you could do it. You could add in more variety, less specificity, farther away from the competition. So for example, if I have a guy who's just like got no upper body, right? He's like new. Obviously we're going to be practicing the competition bench, but as we get closer to the meet, maybe his accessories earlier out might be, like you said, flat dumbbells or a machine, and we might try to get something closer to a competition bench press. Now, if I'm already getting what I need from 2, 3, maybe 4 times a week bench press, I might throw a close grip bench after that. I really love close grip bench. It's just like everything about your comp bench, but it's harder. It's more range of motion. It creates like a longer sticking point, so you're kind of used to like powering through that. But I will say there are going to be like newer coaches that go with like, okay, let's get more specific the closer we get. But sometimes you're going to find a combination that works really, really well, and you don't necessarily have to change anything. If it's working like really well and the training is very predictable, and your week 4s or week 3s are consistently being good, or week 1, however you want to do it, then you can keep, maybe for like bench accessories you have like 1 close grip, 1 incline, 1 flat bench, and that's working really well. The lifter's not complaining about like tightness or injuries. You can go ahead and keep that. But I would say that you're probably going to want to make sure that you're getting enough flat benching first, and then those other accessories can be complementary. And I will say that as you're going through a week, as you're going through a workout, you don't want to have too much extra stuff, because at the end of the day, if it's like you've already done 3 weeks of benching and you're in the last 3 days of benching, or in a week, and you're at that last bench day of the week, that final accessory during that time, I mean, it's debatable if you're going to get like much from it, because you've already done so much, and it's probably better for you to back off. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
So the approach of like keeping like more stable things. So
Yes.
not a huge difference between like 3 or 4 months out or like 6 weeks out. It's not that much of a difference usually.
It can be different. I think it depends, and I think this is the cool thing if you have a lot of time to work with a lifter. Let's say you do a 3-month prep, and you're going to go with maybe something more traditional. And then, okay, that worked fine, but I have a feeling that this may work better, right? Because let's say you got really good results in the first 6 weeks where you were less specific, and then when you got specific, things weren't as good. So then you try a whole 12 weeks where maybe you are like a little bit less specific, and you get a better result. Now you're on to something. Now you're sort of, the feedback that you're getting from the lifter is pushing you in the direction of, hey, this trend is starting to work. Maybe we should run with that. I think we shouldn't change things just to change things unless we have a reason. You gotta have a reason. Otherwise, I would say, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is true, but also you should also kind of be thinking like, how can I make this a little bit better, if I even need to make it better at all. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Over to the next question.
No worries.
Okay, so the next will be like, I see you can first get your take on this and then answer the straight question. You tend to do a lot of singles with the athletes. We see that you tend to do it like year round or maybe close to year round. So the question would be, it's obvious why you do that, because of, to be specific, how do you manage like the intensity and therefore the fatigue that causes or may cause singles, and how do you approach maybe like if a lifter competes, like what's your approach on like getting singles back into the programming? Like at what point would you? Of course, there's a lot of like depends on the athletes, of course. Yeah. But what's your?
So let me give you an example. So tonight I actually have a lifter competing in Alba. She competed. Then we did 2 months. Then competed again at Worlds. And not 2 months. Now she's doing Junior Worlds. Yeah. For her, we don't really have the luxury of not being good at singles. We need to be competent in the singles as much as we can. Obviously, and if you're going to do that, durability. I'm not saying just do that blindly. Durability is a big factor. It has to make sense, and you got to be safe. If the lifter can tolerate it, then it might be a good idea. But definitely, like after this meet, I'm gonna be looking. Now, if she wants to do Euros, that's a whole nother thing. But at some point in the year, we want to get away from this. We want to get away from the frequency of the singles, or at the very minimum, the intensity. Anybody, I think they could do, RPE 5 to 6 singles year round. That's like nothing. You know what I mean? That's not going to tax you. That's literally like a last warm up, even less. So in that regard, that's totally fine. Where you have to be careful is that some lifters, when they see that they have a single, their mind instantly goes to heavy. So if you have to know their personality, and if their personality is very aggressive, they're going to always want to, maybe they're lifting for social media, maybe they're, they really want to push those numbers, you might have to think about taking them out, just take it out completely. Also, how is the lifter's durability? Do they have tightness? Do they have, issues here and there? And it can creep up on you, and it can kind of creep up, maybe like, it's kind of tight one day, not a big deal, and then all of a sudden the next week they try a single and it's like boom, now you have like hip problems. So you just have to be careful with it. You have to be, ideally if I have an advanced lifter and they're only competing once or twice a year, I mean that first block after the meet, we could literally I call it we tear it all down, not really doing the singles, or they're very light, or at the end of the block the singles are like it's not even an opener, so you're still practicing them, but it's not anything like super significant.
Do you give, I know you use RPE mainly, do you, maybe you have for instance, maybe a 5-week block, do you give a suggestion for weights?
Yeah, so as of late,
ends up in a week 5, in the peak, for instance?
As of late, I have been writing in numbers. If let's say we did a block and we finished with some good PRs, right? We had or just solid good numbers. I kind of write that on the side of my sheet, and then I would kind of paste them out so that maybe in 8 weeks, I wanna take those same high intensity numbers that we took, but I want to see that RPE be better. Or I want to take maybe they contact me and they say, hey Joey, I'm warming up right now. I'm telling you, I'm feeling really, really good, and I say, okay, let's go for a PR, right? So I have been doing that just to be a little bit more precise, and just so that my lifters can see there is a weight cap. I do use weight caps sometimes, so they know, okay, I'm not supposed to go over this weight. Now, if they're taking a deload, I mean, they know what RPE 6 is. If you're not following that, I mean, I don't need to write a weight for that, but it just depends. In addition, here's the thing, if you have a weight cap, you can find the rest of your workout easily. Once you have that initial, you're building up that single, you can find out the rest of your workout. Now, if you're doing, some people like to do the single after the reps, you just have to have one set that's accurate with your RPE, and then you can calculate everything else. You can use the RPE calculator. You can go based on feel. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own sort of individual feel for RPE. There's some people, for example, with sumo repetitions, I mean, I know some people that could go crazy with sumo repetitions, but it doesn't translate necessarily to their one or max that much, Whereas conventional, you may hit a triple at 700, and for that individual, I know that's going to be 760, 770, in pounds. So, yeah, it just it really just depends. RPE works really, really well if the lifter sort of has this knowledge, and I would say the more advanced you get as a lifter, you can literally pace it yourself. Jesus Olivares is very good about if we're going into competition and we know we want to squat 1,000 pounds or more, let's say it's Sheffield, we have to go more, right? He knows that we want to end around 970, 980. If we get 1,000, that's great. And then we work backwards. And that kind of helps sort of regulate things. Where you could run into trouble though when you have a set weight is if something happens in the lifter's day-to-day life and they're not able to hit that weight, then they might start thinking of all these reasons why things aren't working, and they can self-destruct. So you just have to know your lifter, you have to know the individual, and you have to make sure that when you're doing these things, at first I try to teach it, don't just give up, try to teach it first, and if it's just really tough for them, then I'll try a different method. But I hope that answers your question. I know it's a lot of talking. Yeah.
No, it's perfect. Yeah. The more the better. Okay, so I have a bonus question after, but this is the last one that I sent to you. And he says, do you make significant changes in SVT volume? Well, I think we can answer that. SVT volume and frequency, further away from competition as opposed to closer away.
I can answer that.
Increase volume, frequency.
So further away from competition, I do try to, I think I've kind of been known for like sets of 8 on squat. Like it's like very difficult.
Yeah.
I love sets of 8. The reason why I like them so much is because it's very invasive to the system. So sets of 8 in like a traditional sense is it's like the low end of a bodybuilding rep range, right? And I try to make it work for powerlifters.
We're talking 4 competition movements without a single
Yes.
or with a single?
You could do a single as well, almost like a warm-up, which is preparation for your sets that are coming after, right?
And straight sets, top sets?
So I'll give people a range of weights to operate in, or a range of RPE where you want to be within that RPE, and that don't really matter too much. Sometimes I'll write like 500 pounds and then minus 10%, do one set there, and then minus another 5 to 10%, do another set there, something like that. That way I'm just more like direct with it. But farther out from competition, I do try to push the reps, try to make the lifter. You're kind of exposed to weaknesses, right? As powerlifters, what are we doing? We're doing triples, we're doing sets of 5, we're doing, all these types of things where you're not really they don't like the cardio, right? But the body is going to adapt to being able to handle that. I also think that in some way, you're almost conditioning the lifter for meet day, because meet day is it's just singles, but people do gas out.
Yeah.
People somehow.
Yeah, it happens, yeah.
So it is for example, just with myself, I've done a little 5-week mini block that actually works really well, where I'll do like 3 weeks, I'm doing 7s on squat, and then I'll do 1 week of 5, 1 week of 3, and then after I'm hitting like my top, like I'm already like peaked, you know what I mean? So, and that's something that you have to see with people. Sometimes with smaller lifters, or if you have a short time to prep, you only have 6 weeks, you're trying to think like, okay, the volume work is our foundation. That is what's going to give us our base. That's what's going to help us, gain as much size as possible. And you want to get the bulk of your work from that. And then you have a week or 2 maybe left over to work with because you're doing a shorter prep. Then you can, it's almost like periodization that we talked about in the beginning, but it's instead of a whole month, it's just that 1 week. You're just doing that 1 week. And that gives you enough time to sort of transition. As the fatigue is coming down, as you're getting more specific, the body's going to get used to these reps. It's going to, your fitness level is going to come up because all that volume that you did is kind of in the past. You need to figure out if you need a deload after those heavy, those high volume sets. And then you can kind of peak right into competition. Now, farther out from competition, I do like to push the reps. As I get closer, I will actually try to get the middle to lower rep ranges. It's not practical to do it like, okay, 3 sets of 8. I'm not going to do 8 sets of 3. I mean, you can, but it's it's not the same. And it's very mentally draining on the lifter. And I think you can accomplish what you need in 4 to 5 sets if you're going to be working with those low reps. Yeah. But I do try to keep in another super annoying rep range that lifters hate is 4x6 is really annoying. I don't even like doing 5x5 because it's it's very tough. It's very rare that I will do a 5x5, maybe on bench, because it is very tough and it can get hard. And if you're doing sets of 5, probably by the 3rd set you don't need to. What are we gaining from the 5th set? I actually did a video on the value of the 5th set. What is the value of the 5th set? You know what I mean? We've already done so much work. But the point is, and the main takeaway from all of this is, your high rep work is where most of your volume is. That's usually going to be your foundational work. That is going to be the work that translates into those big singles. It's not really the best to go straight from 8s, deload in competition. You're going to need a couple weeks to come down from that. So that's why if we're taking the old way of periodization and showing why it's not as effective, because you built all that strength 8 weeks ago and you hadn't done anything like that for 8 weeks, and you're expecting to maintain that strength for 8 weeks. It's not going to happen. You're going to lose fitness, you're going to lose strength. Our fitness in a powerlifting context is our 1 rep max, right? You're going to lose your foundation, and that's why you want it a little bit closer to when you're going to compete, and finding out where that perfect area is going to be is going to depend on the person.
And you give maybe a more like a primary day, maybe like a more volume focused day. Do you do that?
Yes, of course. So I mean, another one that you can kind of do is you might have a day where you're doing sets of 6 to 8, and then another day where you're doing sets of 3 to 5, somewhere in that range. That way you're kind of getting the benefits of both. One way to really simplify training is training is literally just applying stress and then taking it away. and then operating in a tolerable level of stress, and then trying to build on that. So you start here, try to build, and then at some point you're going to have to back off because your body needs to recover. I call it banking your gains. You've been like working really hard, and you've been saving up your paychecks, and now you need to cash it in, right? So you're going to deload, you're going to cash it in, and then you're going to have all these funds to work with, and then you can start working towards making that bank account bigger. But yeah, I don't know why I use the money analogy, but yeah, I hope that answers it. Yeah.
Okay, I have a final question.
Go ahead.
Este video vertical, just for a story.
No worries.
Okay,
No worries.
so the final question would be: you've had a lot of success as a coach. Right now, probably you have the most top lifters in APF. I guess it's a fair statement. So maybe an uncomfortable question, but what would you say that is what is differentiating you? What is the differentiating factor with you that you've been able to build so much success and top level lifters?
Okay, think about that one. For me,
just without any filters, so just
for me, I think, well, one, I grew up in a very diverse environment. I'm from Los Angeles. We have all different types of people from all over the world, and I try to really put myself in the other lifters' shoes, understand their background and where they're coming from, and then kind of work my way back to these are the methods and the lessons that I need to teach the lifter. These are their experiences and where they're from, and then through communication, I'm sort of creating this tether between where I want them to go and where they're at, and then we kind of create almost like our own communication or our own language that we understand, and then over time, you just get better and better and better at it, and literally certain distance out from a meet. If I use Sonita for example, she knows that maybe 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, she's gonna start to feel it a little bit, and then we're gonna have that taper, and she's gonna hit 310 on me day, right? Yeah. But what separates me from others, I guess it's my personality, my ability to sort of analyze situations and then create a plan based on what our obstacles are. I can just tell you, last Sheffield I had 6 lifters. Each lifter had something different going on. Somebody had, you have Jesus only trains 4 days a week, then you have Callie and Delaney training 6 days a week or 5 days a week. You have, everybody has maybe little injuries, Keiko has his little hip, he's good now, but gotta help him navigate that. Maybe this is somebody's first Sheffield, they have a lot of pressure, so I have to try to help them with that. I've already done Sheffield so many times, so I know how to deal with that. So it's just experience. I've operated at that higher level for a really long time. My first World Champions in 2016 with John Hack, and that meet was I literally feel raw powerlifting from that moment forward changed. Yeah. And I think the experiences I've been able to garner over the years, just with different individuals. I really honestly think it's my personal training background way back in the day, way back in the day, before all you guys were born. I was a personal trainer, and I dealt with a lot of different personality types. I dealt with a lot of different people, and being able to just be a people person and communicate with people and try to level with them and be relatable, it allows you just to create a connection that can inspire belief. And I think at the end of the day, belief is so important. If my lifter believes what I'm telling them and they trust what I'm doing, we can do anything. If my lifter doesn't have faith in the plan or something like that, I could give them the best program in the world, it's not going to matter, because you need to have that faith there. And I think also when you have built up a good amount, a bunch of world champions, right? That is going to give other world champions faith that, okay, this guy has a pattern that's working, and maybe that can benefit me. So yeah, I guess I would say that. It's my personality.
Okay, Joey, thank you so much.
Appreciate
it was great. Thanks for your time. I know you're very busy, so you're free to go. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. I hope that was serviceable.
Perfect. Really, very complete answers.